Imagination is not a mere faculty of daydreaming or idle fantasy. It is the fundamental creative power that shapes the conditions of our lives. Everything that exists in the external world was once imagined. The clothes we wear, the homes we live in, the technology we use, each began as an image, a vision, an idea in someone's mind. The same principle applies to personal success and wealth, including the seemingly improbable act of winning a lottery. To imagine something is not simply to see it mentally, but to feel its reality. The secret lies in moving beyond visual fantasy and entering a state where the imagined scene is experienced as real. When imagination is invested with belief and emotion, it becomes a creative act. The mind does not distinguish vividly imagined experience from physical reality. So when one lives internally as though the desire has already been achieved, the subconscious mind accepts it and begins orchestrating events to align with that inner truth. This is not about blind hope or wishful thinking. It is a disciplined practice, creating a scene in your mind where the desire has already materialized and then dwelling in that scene repeatedly until it becomes familiar. The moment you consistently feel the truth of what you imagine, it begins to take root and influence your reality. You are not trying to make something happen. You are recognizing that it has already happened in your inner world, and trusting that the outer world must reflect it. Many who have won the lottery describe vividly imagining themselves with the winning ticket, holding it, feeling the weight of sudden wealth, hearing the voices of friends congratulating them. They do this not once, but as a habit. They live mentally from the place of the result, not toward it. This imaginative act, charged with emotion and sustained through repetition, initiates the change. To rely on imagination as the creative force is to shift power from external chance to internal certainty. It is to recognize that all things proceed from within, and that by directing the imagination deliberately, life itself responds. This is the law behind what may appear as luck, coincidence, or random fortune. Feeling is the secret because it is the bridge between imagination and reality. Thought alone, without emotional investment, remains inert. It floats like a cloud, disconnected from the ground of experience. But once thought is fused with feeling, it comes alive and begins to take shape in the outer world. Emotion is the signal to the subconscious that something is real. The subconscious does not respond to logic, effort, or willpower. It responds to the emotional tone behind the thought. When you feel something deeply, you impress it upon the subconscious mind, and the subconscious is the gateway through which all manifestations occur. Whether you feel fear or joy, lack or abundance, your world molds itself to match that vibration. This is why simply repeating affirmations without conviction often fails to bring change. The words may be correct, but if the feeling contradicts them, if you feel unworthy or doubtful, the deeper emotional signal overrides the surface-level thought. To create change, you must feel the wish fulfilled. Not someday, not in the future, but now. The secret is to move beyond hoping and wanting and enter the emotional state of already having. This means cultivating the inner sensation of success, love, wealth, or whatever it is you desire, and living from that emotional atmosphere as if it were already your reality. The outer world cannot help but conform, because it is always responding to the state you occupy within. Those who achieve what seems impossible often describe a strange sense of certainty, even before anything visible has changed. That certainty is not arrogance. It is the natural result of feeling deeply that something is already true. You no longer need to strive, because the state has been assumed emotionally. This is not pretending or acting, it is identification. You become the person who has, not the person who wants. The lottery winners who truly understood this process did not merely think about winning, they felt it. They entered the joy, the relief, the celebration, long before the numbers matched. They trained themselves to live emotionally in the outcome, rather than the desire, and that emotional state became the cause of their result. The world is a mirror, and the feeling you carry reflects back as circumstance. This is the hidden mechanism behind transformation. The mind conceives, but it is the feeling that gives birth. To assume the wish fulfilled is to inwardly accept that what you desire is already yours. It is not about hoping or waiting, but entering into a mental state where the goal has already been achieved. This assumption, when made with conviction, becomes the foundation of a new reality. It's not about asking whether it is possible or trying to figure out how it will happen. It's about taking your attention away from lack and shifting it fully into the experience of fulfillment. This act of assumption is not a one-time visualization or a fleeting thought. It is a way of being. You think from the end, not of the end. Instead of imagining yourself someday winning, you imagine yourself already living as a winner. You feel the freedom, the gratitude, the excitement that such an event would bring, and you allow those feelings to saturate your inner world. You no longer identify with the person who is striving or waiting. You become the person who already possesses what they once longed for. This inner shift creates a subtle but powerful change in how you move through the world. Your decisions, reactions, and energy begin to reflect your assumed identity. The subconscious mind, which governs behavior and perception, begins to align with this new version of self. Outer circumstances start to rearrange to match the inner assumption. What once seemed distant or unlikely now begins to feel inevitable, because your internal state is no longer contradicting the outcome. The key is to persist in the assumption, even when physical evidence says otherwise. Reality may not change immediately, but if you remain loyal to the feeling of already having, the world will eventually reflect that truth. Doubt and contradiction weaken the creative power of assumption. Consistency is what matters. You continue to think, speak, and act as if the desired outcome is your present experience, not a future goal. Those who have manifested extraordinary outcomes, like winning large sums of money or transforming their lives, often describe this unwavering commitment to the end result. They didn't wait for proof. They assumed the reality within themselves. They lived mentally and emotionally in a world where their wish had already been fulfilled. Over time, the external followed the internal. Assumption is not passive, it is an active, conscious stance that redefines what is possible. When held with conviction, it calls forth the invisible into the visible, the imagined into the actual. To ignore outer circumstances is to recognize that the visible world is a reflection of past thoughts, beliefs, and emotions, not a fixed reality. It is a record of what has been assumed and accepted, not a guide for what must continue. When you accept this truth, you stop allowing your current environment, bank account, or situation to dictate what you believe is possible. Instead, you anchor yourself in the unseen, your inner vision, your imagined reality, and give it more authority than what your senses report. The outer world is always late to the party. It shows you what you once believed, not what you now choose to believe. If you react to current appearances, whether they are filled with limitation, lack, or struggle, you reinforce them. You give them power and extend their life. But if you can remain loyal to your inner vision in the face of contradiction, you begin to rise above the cycle of reaction. You stop being a servant to circumstances and become the master of them. This requires discipline. When your bank balance says not enough, or when everything seems to oppose your desire, the natural reaction is to worry or doubt. But those emotions are simply more seeds planted in the subconscious, destined to reproduce similar outcomes. The creative power within you does not care whether you are imagining abundance or poverty, success or failure. It simply responds to what you feel is real. That is why ignoring what is and focusing on what will be, until it feels present, is the only true path to transformation. To ignore does not mean denial or delusion. It means choosing to give your attention and belief to a higher truth than what is presently visible. It means walking by inner conviction, not by sight. The world may not change immediately, but your assumption, held steady, begins to carve new paths beneath the surface. Eventually, circumstances bend to reflect your new state of consciousness, not the other way around. Those who have achieved extraordinary shifts in their lives often recall the moment they stopped reacting to the world and began creating from within. They no longer waited for things to improve before feeling better. They felt better first, and the world caught up. They turned away from what seemed real and focused instead on what they had chosen to make real. This is the power of ignoring outer circumstances. It frees you from the illusion that what you see is all there is, and it places creation back where it belongs, in your imagination, guided by feeling, sustained by faith. To live in the end is to occupy the mental and emotional state of your fulfilled desire as if it were already part of your reality. It means assuming, without question, that what you want has already happened, and aligning your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors with that truth. You do not wait for confirmation from the outer world. You give yourself that confirmation within. You mentally dwell in the scene of the outcome, experiencing it from the inside, rather than looking at it as something to reach for in the future. Living in the end shifts your identity. It moves you from being someone who wants to someone who has. This is not about pretending or daydreaming. It is a deliberate decision to feel and think from the conclusion of your goal, instead of constantly analyzing the path to get there. When you live in the end, the details of how it will happen become irrelevant. You let go of needing to control the process, because you already know the end is secure in consciousness. This state of mind is powerful because it creates inner certainty. The imagination, when fused with feeling, impresses the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind orchestrates experiences to match that impression. By living in the end, you give the subconscious clear instructions. This is who I am. This is what my life looks like. This is what is true for me. And from that inner declaration, reality begins to bend. It is tempting to return to the present problem, to notice the gap between desire and manifestation, but to do so is to fall out of the end and back into the struggle. The key is persistence, returning again and again to the end, reinforcing its feeling, until it becomes more real to you than the lack of it. When you remain there, unmoved by appearances, you begin to walk through life with a calm knowing, because you are no longer trying to become, you are being. Many who have changed their lives through what seems like luck or coincidence were, in truth, living in the end. Before any physical sign appeared, they were already emotionally dwelling in the house they wanted, spending the money they hadn't yet received, hearing the congratulations they hadn't yet earned. The world eventually yielded to that internal state, because the outer always follows the inner. To live in the end is to live beyond time, to collapse waiting into being, and to claim what is yours before the world sees it. To persist in the assumption is to remain faithful to the inner reality you have chosen, regardless of what the outer world shows. It means continuously returning to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, holding it with unwavering confidence even when circumstances contradict it. Persistence is not forceful or anxious, it is calm, steady conviction. It is the quiet decision to believe in your imagined outcome more than you believe in current facts. The world around you is slow to change because it reflects past beliefs and assumptions that have taken root. When you begin to assume a new reality, wealth, health, success, love, you are planting a new seed. If you doubt, fear, or revert to the old story, you dig up the seed before it has a chance to grow. But if you persist, if you continue to feel and think from your desired state, you nourish that seed until it takes form. Persistence is essential because the subconscious mind is impressed through repetition and emotion. A single assumption, held briefly, may not penetrate deep enough to cause change, but an assumption repeated, believed, and felt over time creates momentum. It becomes your dominant vibration, and life responds accordingly. You begin to notice coincidences, shifts, opportunities, not because you chased them, but because you became the person for whom those things are natural. The real challenge comes when nothing seems to be changing. That is when persistence is tested. In those moments, the temptation is to give up, to say it's not working, to look around and let appearances dictate your truth. But that is the very moment when persistence matters most. It is easy to believe when everything aligns. The transformation occurs when you believe despite the evidence. That unwavering inner posture eventually causes the world to adjust. Those who succeed at manifesting great outcomes, whether it's winning money, healing illness, or finding love, are not those who tried once and hoped. They are those who assumed the end and kept assuming it, day after day, thought after thought, even when results were invisible. They did not negotiate with doubt or let delays shake their faith. They lived from the end and returned to it repeatedly until it felt natural, until it was the only reality they accepted within. Persistence in assumption is not about effort, but about identity. You assume the role and you stay in it, like an actor who refuses to break character. Eventually, the world treats you according to that role, not because you forced it, but because you embodied it. The outer world has no choice but to mirror the persistence of your inner state. Revision rewrites destiny because it alters the meaning and emotional charge of past experiences, which continue to shape your present and future reality. Every memory you hold is not just a story. It's a living influence that informs your assumptions, reactions, and identity. If the memory is painful, humiliating, or limiting, it continues to echo in your subconscious, subtly directing your choices and reinforcing beliefs about what is possible for you. But the past is not fixed. It exists only in consciousness, and consciousness can be changed. When you revise a past event, you are not denying that it happened. You are choosing to relive it differently in imagination. You see it unfold in a new way, with a new outcome, and most importantly, you feel the new version as if it were the true one. The subconscious does not distinguish between what happened physically and what is vividly felt in imagination. It accepts the revised version and begins to adjust your internal state accordingly. That shift in state changes your emotional patterns, your beliefs, and eventually your circumstances. The practice of revision is a powerful form of inner reprogramming. Instead of letting the past dictate who you are, you reclaim authorship over your story. A rejection becomes a breakthrough, a loss becomes a lesson fulfilled, a mistake becomes a moment of clarity. These new meanings reshape how you see yourself and what you expect from life. When your inner history changes, your outer destiny must follow. The influence of revision extends beyond isolated memories. Often, it's the cumulative weight of many similar past events, disappointments, failures, betrayals, that hardens into a self-concept of limitation. By revisiting and rewriting these emotional moments, one by one or in essence, you begin to dismantle the inner blocks that have quietly dictated the outcomes in your life. This is not mere therapy, it is creation. You are not fixing the past, you are creating a new present by changing its roots. Those who have experienced radical changes often discover that letting go of the past was not enough. They had to revise it. They had to give new meaning to what happened and decide consciously what role those events would play in their life story. In doing so, they liberated themselves from cycles that had seemed unbreakable. The future opened up, not because something external changed, but because the script they were living from had been rewritten. And once that script changes, so does the path it leads to. Inner speech becomes outer world because the conversations you have within yourself are not private musings. They are creative acts. Every internal dialogue you engage in impresses the subconscious mind and contributes to the shaping of your external experiences. The words you silently repeat, the assumptions you confirm, the arguments you rehearse, and the worries you replay, all of it forms the blueprint from which your reality is constructed. Thought becomes speech, and inner speech becomes manifestation. Most people are unaware of how constant and powerful their inner commentary is. It flows throughout the day, shaping mood, decisions, reactions, and expectations. If your inner speech is filled with lack, doubt, anger, or inferiority, you are affirming those states again and again, regardless of what you consciously say you want. The outer world then reflects that inner script, because your subconscious does not respond to what you wish for. It responds to what you repeatedly declare to be true within. Changing your outer world, then, begins by changing your inner conversations. It means becoming aware of what you are telling yourself moment by moment, and deliberately choosing to think in alignment with your desired reality. If you want to be wealthy, you must stop rehearsing poverty in your mind. If you want to be loved, you must stop having internal arguments where you feel unwanted or misunderstood. You replace those habitual scripts with new ones, conversations that reflect confidence, joy, success, and fulfillment. This is not about forced positive thinking. It is about authentic transformation through conscious inner speech. You don't just repeat phrases. You feel them. You speak from the perspective of someone who already lives the reality you want. You imagine receiving praise, giving thanks, celebrating victories, not as a future hope, but as a present experience. These inner dialogues, carried with feeling and repetition, embed themselves in your consciousness and shape your perception, which in turn affects your behavior, energy, and what you attract. People who change their lives often describe a shift in how they talk to themselves. They stop criticizing and start encouraging. They stop doubting and start affirming. Over time, the new inner speech becomes natural, and the outer world begins to mirror it. Opportunities arise, relationships shift, problems dissolve, not because of effort alone, but because the inner world changed first. Your reality is always echoing the tone and content of your inner voice. When that voice is deliberately shaped, the world has no choice but to reflect it. Faith is loyalty to the unseen reality because it requires you to remain steadfast in your inner conviction, even when the outer world offers no evidence. It is the ability to trust what you have imagined and felt within, to know it as true, before there is any physical sign of its existence. Faith is not passive belief. It is an active, conscious allegiance to the vision you have created in your mind. It means refusing to betray that vision by giving more weight to doubt, fear, or appearances. When you choose to walk by faith, you are not being unrealistic. You are simply giving authority to a deeper level of truth, one that exists beyond the senses. The world around you is shaped by what you accept as real within yourself. Faith is the commitment to keep seeing and feeling that inner truth, even when logic, time, or external voices suggest otherwise. It is the quiet confidence that the unseen is more potent than the seen, that the invisible cause will inevitably become the visible effect. Faith is the bridge between assumption and manifestation. When you assume the wish fulfilled and persist in that assumption, faith is what holds you there. It carries you through the moments when nothing appears to be changing, when circumstances challenge your resolve, when the temptation arises to give up or settle for less. In those moments, faith is not an emotion, but a choice to remain loyal to the inner outcome no matter what. This kind of faith is not rooted in external hope, but in inner knowing. It comes from having seen and felt your desired reality so vividly within that you can no longer entertain its absence. You do not need to explain it or justify it. You simply know, and that knowing shapes your actions, your tone, your expectations. The world begins to respond, not because you forced it, but because you aligned with a version of yourself that already holds the outcome. Those who achieve what others consider miraculous are often those who have mastered this kind of faith. They move through the world with a sense of quiet assurance. They may not share their vision with others, but they live in it internally. They remain loyal to it, defend it from doubt, nourish it with imagination and feeling, and in time the unseen becomes seen, not by chance, but by the unwavering loyalty of faith. The bridge of incidence is the unfolding path that leads from your assumed desire to its physical realization, often in ways you could not have predicted or planned. Once you have imagined and accepted the end as true, once you feel yourself in possession of the fulfilled desire, the universe begins to arrange a sequence of events, circumstances, and encounters that bring you to that end. These events are not always dramatic or immediately meaningful, but they are precise steps in the manifestation of what you have accepted as real within. You are not responsible for designing or controlling the bridge. Your only task is to remain faithful to the end result and allow life to unfold in its own way. The bridge of incidence may appear ordinary, unexpected, or even uncomfortable, but it is always perfect in retrospect. It is how the unseen becomes seen, how the invisible assumption takes on form and substance. The means by which your desire comes to pass is never your concern. It is determined by a higher intelligence that works through the subconscious mind and the interconnected fabric of reality. Often, the bridge begins to appear only after a firm assumption has been made and felt. A conversation overheard, a chance meeting, a job offer, a sudden insight. All of these can be pieces of the bridge. You may find yourself moved to take action or placed in a situation that leads you closer to your desire without conscious effort. What might seem like coincidence or randomness is actually part of a perfectly ordered chain of events responding to your inner state. Trusting the bridge means releasing the need to interfere or question. It requires patience, awareness, and the willingness to follow intuitive nudges, even if they make little sense at the time. Sometimes the bridge challenges old beliefs or removes obstacles that stand in the way of your fulfillment. You might experience delays, detours, or unexpected shifts, but each one is essential to the path. When you stay loyal to your assumption, you move through the bridge with grace, even when you don't yet see the full picture. Those who have manifested dramatic changes, winning lotteries, healing illness, finding love, often look back and recognize the subtle, intricate series of events that led them there. At the time, they may not have known how it would unfold, but they remained in the state of the wish fulfilled, and in doing so, they allowed the bridge of incidence to carry them effortlessly to the result. The bridge is always built, always in motion, once the inner reality is accepted. It connects the imagined with the experienced, and it is walked not by force, but by faith. In the end, the journey from desire to fulfillment is not a matter of luck, chance, or struggle. It is a matter of consciousness. The techniques we've explored are not speculative philosophies, but time-tested principles that countless individuals have used to manifest extraordinary results. When you assume the wish fulfilled, live in the end, and persist in that inner reality regardless of appearances, you activate a force far more powerful than effort, the creative power of imagination fused with feeling. By revising your past, shaping your inner speech, and remaining loyal to the unseen, you participate in the same process that governs all creation. The outer world is not your master, it is your mirror. The only question is, will you continue to react to what is, or will you consciously create what will be? The choice is yours, and the power has always been within you.